Which veteran Dynasty players should you buy low on? We're talking about that in today's video. As always, guys, if you like Dynasty content, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. I think we're about 15 subscribers away from 1,300. It would be awesome if we can get there by the end of the month. It is buy low season. It's kind of the doldrums of the Dynasty season. Obviously, there's a lot of moves that are made after the season finishes. Waiver wire moves, all of that. Then you have all this rookie talk and picks being traded. Now that rookie drafts are kind of coming to an end, I know a lot of you are still drafting. Some of you don't draft until August, but I'd say a majority of rookie drafts are done within the first couple of weeks of the NFL draft finishing. You kind of get into this little bit of the doldrums, right? A little bit of a lull when it comes to the action happening, basically until training camp's going to be starting up at the end of July. But it's always a good time to buy low. Buy low on veterans, man. Dynasty players are weird. We're really, really weird. We can get veteran productive players for relatively cheap in the offseason, and it's a lot harder to get during the season when these guys are producing. So these are all buy lows of players that I think are going to produce next year, have a very good chance at producing and actually being kind of difference-making pieces for your teams. Now, I tried to go a little bit shallow to a little bit deep for some of you shallow league players, you deep league players. We're starting off with the running back position, and James Conner is the first one here. James Conner, the RB31, according to Keep Trade Cut. And this is always going to be the case with these older running backs, right? It's always going to be the case. Like, older running backs are always going to be good values. Derrick Henry, before last year, like, Derrick Henry was in this range. He was in like the 30s and 40s because of the age factor. Then he signed with the Ravens and he got a bump, but he was still a buy low even when he was signed with the Ravens. And then, during the season, he gets as high as like the RB12 because we all realizing, oh yeah, this guy's productive. Running backs, outside of the handful of guys, we really need to stop looking at running backs beyond what they can provide for me in the upcoming season. Obviously, guys like Bijan, Gibbs, Genty, some of the rookies, even some players maybe like Achane, Bucky Irving, guys like that. Okay, we're expecting multiple years, and we would like multiple years. That being said, a lot of these running backs, we're kind of year to year. And we're talking about a guy in James Conner here who, since coming with the Cardinals, here's his PPR points per game finish for James Conner since coming to the Cardinals in 2021. RB9 in points per game, all PPR. RB10 in points per game in 2022, RB13 in points per game in 2023, and then last year he was the RB14. He's literally been a low-end RB1 for 4 straight years. The dude produces when he's on the field. He put up over 1,500 total yards, had one of his better seasons in the last few seasons. He caught almost 50 passes, only scored 9 touchdowns, which I say only is like this. If this offense can improve, he could easily get into the double-digit touchdowns. The team trusts him. He's kind of the identity of their team. Now, the big knock on James Conner was like he could never stay healthy. It looked like last year he was actually going to stay healthy, missed the last game of the year, I believe it was, or he left early in the fantasy championship as well. Only played in 15% of the snaps, but the dude was productive. And go look at when the Cardinals were winning. James Conner was awesome. Like, this is their identity. I don't see any running back on this team that's going to threaten James Conner, in my opinion. I'm not worried about Trey Benson affecting James Conner. I'm just not. He's only 30 years old. Like, we've seen running backs, Derrick Henry, where Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon's a little bit older. These guys are producing at an older age. Good running backs can produce at the age of 30. I know a lot of running backs don't get to the age of 30, but the guys that do, that are good, assuming you're good, if you get there, you can produce, right? I'm not worried about Trey Benson, Amari DiMercato, Michael Carter. I'm not. James Conner is going to be awesome this year. When he plays, and he'll probably miss a couple of games, but when he plays, he's going to be a low-end RB1 once again on hopefully a better offense. And just look at where we're ranking this guy. He's behind Tajay Spears. James Conner, slightly ahead of Tajay Spears, but he's behind guys like Tyrone Tracy, DeAndre Swift. Zach Charbonnet is ahead of James Conner. Why? Because he's 6 years younger. Zach Charbonnet hasn't produced anything. James Conner is going to be awesome. He's going to be productive. If you can go out and get him and buy low on him for a contending team, usually I want to wait a little bit Wait until closer to the season for these veteran running backs, or even in season. But if you can get them at a pretty cheap price, go and do it. Tony Pollard, RB35. You see the startup, by the way, the round 11, pick 122. That's the startup draft. That's the startup draft ADP there. And Tony Pollard is all the way down in round 11 and 122. And I'm a little bit surprised about this. Like, I know people basically, since Pollard has taken over kind of the full-time role, like he was awesome when he was kind of the 1B to Zeke. And then since taking over the full-time role last year in Dallas, and then this 2024 in Tennessee, like we've been a little bit disappointed because we were expecting like top 5 type of production. He was still very good last year, Tony Pollard. He was the RB22 in points per game. That's pretty good. That's obviously it's a low end RB2 for if you play in a little bit, if you play in shallow leagues, Pollard's not as important. What I mean by shallow leagues is anyone playing in a 10 or 12 team, start 8, start 9, not including kickers and defense, start 8, start 9, stuff like that. Start 12 team, start 10 is pretty standard. And then anything over a 12 team start 10 is starting to get into deeper leagues. But Tony Pollard, I know people are maybe a little bit worried about Tajay Spears, but when Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard were healthy, Pollard was averaging 15 carries and 3 catches a game. That's like really good production there. You're telling me you're getting 18 touches with 2 to 3 of them coming as catches. He's going to be, again, an RB2. And by the way, he did all of that, was the RB2 in points per game with only 5 touchdowns. Only 5 touchdowns. That's a good thing. He put up over 1,300 total yards, over 40 catches in 16 games. This offense could be better with Cam Ward. He could get 8 touchdowns, and I wouldn't be shocked. So I just think Tony Pollard is one of those pieces that people aren't very excited about. He's getting to that age that we're not very excited about. And I think he's just going to put up RB2 numbers, and you can buy him as more of an RB3. And then we're going deep on this one, guys. Austin freaking Eckler. Again, if you play in any type of shallow league or any kind of, 12 team start 8, 12 team start 9, even 12 team start 10s, Austin Eckler is not the guy that you should be expecting to help you, fit into a flex spot. But if you play in like a 12 team start 12, which I do with my listener leagues, that's 144 players being started every single year, every single week, 144 players. Austin Eckler is going to be a flex piece, a bench piece in those type of leagues. I think people are a little bit surprised about what Eckler kind of did last year. He averaged 3 catches a game, which is a little bit under his career, but he averaged 3 catches a game. He would have had over 50 catches. He was getting about 6.5 carries per game. So, he was basically getting 9.5 touches per game, right? That's basically what Austin Eckler was getting. So that's going to give him about 160 touches per game in a 17-game season. But his yards per touch was one of the best in his career, 6.5 yards per touch. That's the best since 2019 for Austin Eckler. So he kind of went back a little bit towards that, what he was the beginning of his career when he was with Melvin Gordon, where he was getting, not as many touches per game, 3 catches, 6-7 carries, but he was very good with his yards per touch and he was very efficient. He kind of went back to that. With the Commanders. And again, like, they didn't really draft anyone. They brought in one guy, Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt. He brought in Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt, a 7th round pick. That's all they brought in. I think they're going to kind of run it back with Eckler and Brian Robinson. And like you put together what he was doing last year with about 160 touches, averaging 6.5 yards per touch. If he gets, let's say, 150 touches this year, that's almost 1,000 total yards for Austin Eckler and probably 50 catches. Now, is he going to have a bunch of touchdowns or anything like that? Probably not. But you're telling me a guy with 1,000 total yards and 50 catches and a handful of touchdowns, that guy is going to be a flex-worthy piece in these deeper leagues. And look at where he's ranked. He's all the way. He's kind of around 18 in a startup, right? He's down as the RB70. The RB70. That's not going to, guys, he's not going to finish his RB70 if they use him like they did last year. He's going to be probably top 30. That's where he was last year in points per game. He was top 30 in PPR. That's probably where he fits in, right around that RB3 range. So go out and buy some Austin Eckler. Next up, we got Jerry Jeudy, who I'm kind of surprised that after what the Browns did in the draft, that Jeudy didn't get a bump, really. He's moved up 2 spots over the last month, so not really anything significant. He's the wide receiver 37, according to Keep Trade Cut. He's behind guys like, and again, Jerry Jeudy, this is why, like, our perception of players really does affect fantasy and dynasty value so much, because we're talking about a guy who still, by the way, just turned 26 years old like a month ago, is coming off a career year. Now, I know it's year 5 of his career where he broke out, and that's a reason why we're a little bit hesitant, but it's not like he did nothing in the years before. His rookie year was pretty good for a rookie, 52 catches, 850 yards. He had a pretty good 2022 season, 67 catches, 972 yards and 6 touchdowns, and then kind of, fell out of favor in Denver, and, it was all kind of messed up there, and Steve Smith talking crap and all of this stuff. But then he comes out and he puts up 145 targets, 90 catches, 1,229 yards, only 4 touchdowns. He's the wide receiver 12 in total points and is incredibly productive, former first-round pick. So he has that. We kind of knew this was all, this was possible. Is this like a Devontae Parker type of situation where it's like, all right, you had that one good year and then you're gone? Maybe, but then the Browns don't really do anything in the draft to really make you worried about Jerry Jeudy at all. Like, we thought it was going to be Travis Hunter and that was going to affect Jerry Jeudy. Well, they didn't draft Travis Hunter. Their wide receivers 1, 2, and 3 right now are Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, and Deontay Johnson. You're telling me with Joe Flacco as the quarterback that Jerry Judy's not going to get 150 targets again? You're telling me that he's not with Joe Flacco as the quarterback, and hopefully it's Joe Flacco? Jerry Judy's going to be awesome. Jerry Jeudy, I think, at worst is a low-end wide receiver too, and to me, he has top 12 potential this year. And I think, buying him as the wide receiver 37, and if he has another good year, he's still young enough to where he can move up in the rankings. He's not like Terry McLaurin, who is coming off a top 10 season with Jaden Daniels, but because he's 29 going on 30, he's never going to get that high. If Jerry Jeudy has another big year, we could see him ranked in the top 25 of wide receivers, maybe sneaks into the top 20 wide receivers if he has another kind of top 12 season. So I just think, like, I was talking about buying low on Jerry Jeudy back in February. We made a video on that back in February. And, to me, this was before Flacco, and this was assuming they were going to get, some kind of help in the draft, and they really didn't. So buy low on Jerry Jeudy. Deebo Samuel. This one is obviously we're getting a little bit deeper here with a guy like Deebo Samuel, wide receiver 52. People are very, very down on Deebo, and I get it. He's coming off a really bad year. He's getting up there in age now. He's at that age where we're worried about it. It's always going to affect his value. He turned 29 back in January, and we saw a bad year from Deebo. And we saw a bad year from Deebo when Brandon Ayuk and Christian McCaffrey basically, Brandon Ayuk missed a majority of the season or half the season. Christian McCaffrey missed basically the entire season. And so we expected, okay, like, you would have told us that, or then Deebo Samuel smashed, right? And he didn't. He put up 820 yards, 4 touchdowns, 51 catches. The reason why I'm a little bit optimistic on Deebo is he's going into a new team, new scenery, right? Which is good. That'll be good for him, I think. He's going to a team with a young quarterback that's an absolute, like, I don't think it was a coincidence that a guy like Austin Eckler had the best yards per touch in his career since 2019. I don't think it's a coincidence that Terry McLaurin had had a career year, 6 years into his career, because of Jaden Daniels and what he does. Just like, he's just such a weapon, right? Another reason why I kind of like Deebo is that the Washington Commanders, I think, ran the 3rd most screenplays. That's kind of, people used to call Cliff Screensberry, because, like, that's all they felt like he did was just that dink and dunk screen type of production and things like that. They still did that a lot and it worked this last year. I think they had the third most, or they were definitely in the top five most. And Deebo Samuel was still good when he received screen passes. He had like 20, I think it was 20 or 24 targets behind the line of scrimmage, and he was efficient with those targets behind the line of scrimmage. So I think he kind of fits the Commanders' offense perfectly. I think he complements someone like Terry McLaurin fantastically. I think they're going to give him a lot of screen touches and things like that. They're going to use him in the backfield still because, they have Brian Robinson, but Deebo Samuel could be just their best pure runner. So I could see a little bit of a bounce back. Deebo Samuel shocked me too much. Calvin Ridley, another guy that I was telling people to buy low on before the draft, basically because they were going to draft Cam Ward. That was the big reason why. And I said the exact same thing. Go back and look last year about Terry McLaurin. I said, buy low on Terry McLaurin, who I don't think Terry McLaurin got quite as low as where Calvin Ridley was, or is, I should say, in terms of his ranking. But go look at so Terry McLaurin during the offseason last year was floating around wide receiver 35 to 40, right? Wide receiver 35 to 40 is where he was floating around. Beginning of the year, when he kind of had 2 dud games, he dropped to wide receiver 45. Okay. And now he's wide receiver 29. And if you go look at Terry McLaurin's numbers from like week 3 onwards, he was like a top 7 wide receiver. I think this year, Calvin Ridley is this year's Terry McLaurin, where I don't know if he's going to be quite as good. I think Terry McLaurin's just a better wide receiver than Ridley. And I think that Jaden Daniels is obviously a better wide receiver quarterback than Cam Ward. But in terms of a wide receiver who no one's even thinking about, is in a situation where what if Cam Ward is just good? What if he's a good quarterback? What if he's CJ Stroud type of production and look at what Nico Collins did? What if he's Jaden Daniels and look at what Terry McLaurin did? What if that is Calvin Ridley this year? It wouldn't shock me. And we're talking about a guy who, has he been a disappointment? Sure. But he still put up over 1,000 total yards. He still managed to put up over 1,000 total yards with Will Levis and Mason Rudolph as his quarterbacks. What if Cam Ward's just good? Could we see a 1,200-yard season, an 8-touchdown season, an 80-catch season where he's actually pretty good for fantasy? I could see it. I really could see it. And again, just go look at that depth chart, man. That depth chart is kind of bad, for their wide receivers. When you have Tyler Lockett and Treylon Burks in your starting wide receiver spots, that's really bad. Who's behind him? Van Jefferson, a couple of 4th-round picks, and Chimere Dike and Alec Eilmanor. It's Calvin Ridley's show, man. Even their tight end is Chigakonkwo, Gunnar Helm. Okay, this is the Calvin Ridley show. We could see maybe the best. It's going to be tough to beat his 2020 season, but we could see his best season easily since 2020, Calvin Ridley. And I would not be shocked. So I would go out and get Calvin Ridley. I would be, if he's healthy all year, unless Cam Ward is just like Bryce Young bad, I would be shocked if Calvin Ridley's not a top 30 wide receiver. And I would probably put money on him being a top 20 wide receiver pretty easily if Cam Ward is just like a good rookie, has a good rookie year. Into some tight ends before we finish up here. Dallas Goedert, the guy who is always disrespected. Dallas Goedert since 2021, which is, I believe, when Zach Ertz left this team. 2021, he was the tight end 8 in points per game. 2022, he was the tight end 5 in points per game. 2023, as it loads here, 2023, Dallas Goedert was a top 10 tight end in points per game. And then last year, Dallas Goedert somehow was a top, I think the tight end 13 in points per game last year. I don't think people would have guessed that Dallas Goedert, I'll tell you here exactly. Sorry, he was the tight end 10 in points per game. And by the way, that includes a game where, according to Fantasy Pros, I see that he actually didn't play in that game, but they're counting it as a 0. So that means he was actually even better than that. Dallas Goedert just signed a contract. This team, he was averaging 4.2 catches per game and 50 yards a game. I don't think you guys realize like how good that is for a tight end. 4 catches a game for a tight end is over 70 catches, and 50 yards for a tight end per game is over 850 yards. Go look at how many tight ends last year had 70 catches and 850 yards. Not many. Now, is he going to score touchdowns? No. That's just not who Dallas Goedert is. He's on the Eagles. Jalen Hurts is going to steal a bunch of touchdowns. But Dallas Goedert's going to be, and they just gave him a contract, a good tight end, and he just gets disrespected year after year after year. I would 100% tear down from a bunch of these different tight ends and tear down to Dallas Goedert while picking up extra pieces and be happy with it. I would tear down from Tucker Kraft. I would tear down from Njoku, from maybe not Mark Andrews, Jake Ferguson, Evan Ingram, Dalton Kincaid. I would tear down from these guys, pick up extra pieces, and roll with Dallas Goedert as my starting quarterback, tight end. And he's a very good chance that Dallas Goedert's better than all those names that I just said. Mike Gesicki is another one. I don't really understand the ranking for Mike Gesicki. Now, is Mike Gesicki going to be consistent? No. Why is he not going to be consistent? Well, because he just doesn't play enough. You go look at his snap share last year, I think people would be shocked because he had a good year. 65 catches, 665 yards. His snap share was under 50%, which is why you get games from Mike Gesicki, 1 catch for 2 yards, 0 targets, 0 catches, 0 yards, right? You get those type of games because he's just not playing a lot. That being said, Mike Gesicki is the wide receiver 3 for the Bengals. And they're going to put up, potentially over 5,000 yards passing. He only had 2 touchdowns last year, by the way. I think Mike Gesicki is going to be a good tight end next year, and he's capable of having games he had some big games, 7 for 91, 10 for 86, 6 for 68, 5 for 100, 7 for 73. I'll take a handful of those games and then you're giving me zeros in other games, and I'll be fine with it because I don't build my teams. I'll build my team so that whatever the tight end does is just a cherry on top. I'll build my team so that if Mike Gesicki gives me 7 for 73 or 10 for 86, I'm winning that week because he's putting up a massive number. So Mike Gesicki, to me, it's kind of crazy that he's this low. I don't really see anyone on the Bengals that is potentially going to threaten his job as that wide receiver 3, essentially they're wide receiver 3. It's not Drew Sample. Eric All, I think, is going to miss this year. Tanner Hudson, not happening. Not happening. Last one here is Hunter Henry. Again, these seem like gross names, but these are all players that I think are going to produce this year. That's this list. This is not buy low because this guy could break out. This is buy low because I think these guys are going to produce, and people are not treating them as if they are going to produce like I think they have a very good chance at doing so. Hunter Henry, we all know the name. Has been kind of a streaming tight end during his time with New England. Like he's always on the waiver wire or picked up during bye weeks so that you can go out and start him when your main tight end's on a bye, right? Hunter Henry, I went back and looked at his numbers. There was 9 games where him and Drake May played a majority of the snaps together. There was 1 game where obviously Drake May didn't start the beginning of the year. He missed the game as well when he took over as the starter, and then he hardly played, I think, in the last week. But essentially, there was 9 games where Hunter Henry and Drake May played a majority of the snaps together. Here's Hunter Henry's 17-game pace based on those 9 games. 121 targets, 85 catches, 600 yards, and 4 touchdowns. 85 catches, 600 yards. Again, go look at how many tight ends had 85 catches last year. Not many. Now, am I saying that Hunter Henry's going to have 120 targets and 85 catches? No, I'm not, because I do think they upgraded their weapons, right? And that was a big reason why Hunter Henry had so many targets and catches is they were throwing to guys like Kayshon Boutte, Demario Douglas, and Kendrick Bourne. Well, now they've upgraded it, but it's not like they significantly upgraded it. They got Travion Henderson, a good pass-catching running back, in my opinion. You brought in Stephon Diggs. You drafted Kyle Williams, so it's better, but it's not like there's no way Hunter Henry can do, even 70 catches and, have a little bit better yards per reception. 85 catches and only 600 yards is not great. He could easily drop 15 catches and still put up like 1,600 yards if he just kind of increases his yards per reception, right? He averaged 7 yards per reception, which is not great for Hunter Henry, or it's not necessarily great in general for a tight end. So, by the way, Hunter Henry, like I think we kind of think of him more as a touchdown guy. Like the reason why we are streaming him is because we thought, okay, I have a decent chance for a touchdown based on the guys on the waiver wire. I have a decent chance for a touchdown. He only had 2 last year. So like even if he drops off by like 20, 30 targets, drops off by 15, 20 catches, he could still put up very similar numbers in terms of production. And still give you around 500-600 yards. Maybe he gives you, 7 or 8 touchdowns, and if Drake May takes that next step. And if he does that, if he gives you 85 catches, 600 yards, and 4 touchdowns, that's going to be good for tight end 9. That would have been good for tight end 9 last year in total points. So again, are these the sexiest names? Do they have future value? Probably not, but in terms of 2025. And there's a lot of pieces that you can get because people don't value them. Go out and trade for these guys. I think they're going to be productive for you. Appreciate everyone watching. Make sure to join our Discord. Link is in the description. And I'll catch you guys all in the next video.